Welcome to the Claws YouTube channel.
Together, we strive for a safer, secure, and more stable world.
Welcome to Strategic Frontlines, the official YouTube channel for Center for Land Warfare Studies. Joining us today are three distinguished experts who bring deep insights into the intersection of technology, strategy, and security. Air Commodore Dr. Ashminder Bahal is a distinguished Air Force veteran, academic, and diplomatic with over 4 decades of leadership in operations, strategy, and education. He is a visiting fellow at CLAWS and is currently serving as the Executive Director, Learning Processes at AVRA Educational Hub. Major General Sudhakar Jee is a seasoned officer with 37 years of service in the Indian Army and a distinguished fellow at CLAWS. He is a respected geopolitical and security expert, widely known for his analysis on military strategy and international affairs. And Dr. Khanijo, who is the Director, Projects and Events at CLAWS and an expert in nuclear and strategic domains. I welcome the three of you.
Thank you.
To set the tone for today's discussion, we are looking at how the trenches of Ukraine are developing, and industrial logistics are helping do that. And we are greatly focusing on the unmanned ground vehicles that are redefining what machines can do on the move. In the Russia-Ukraine war, UGVs have evolved from experimental prototypes to real battlefield assets, taking on missions like mine clearance, casualty evacuation, resupply, and even frontline assault support. They are testing the limits of robotics under fire and reshaping how militaries think about autonomy, risk, and human-machine cooperation. But while aerial drones have often taken over the headlines, ground drones do face a much difficult and tougher terrain, quite literally and figuratively. And beyond warfare, we are also looking at similar technologies that are driving innovation across logistics, agriculture, disaster responses, and industrial automation, showing us how quickly this gap between civilian and military use is narrowing down. So in this context, we would start with Air Commodore Bahal on how the UGVs are becoming a silent revolution in modern warfare. And in context of Russia-Ukraine war, what are the real capabilities of the unmanned systems on both the sides, with the Russian military and with the Ukrainian military?
Thank you very much for inviting me in this very important topic, as well as I am amongst the great leaders who are sitting here, Sudhakar Ji and Dr. Roshan. And it really humbles me to open the proceedings, so to say. Now, Russia-Ukraine war has clearly shown us the way drones have made a big difference in the warfare. The attack, Operation Spiderweb, will always be known for the hybrid warfare capability that Ukraine has built in, and the way they had prepared it for nearly 18 months, and thereafter they had used agents which had taken them in trucks, the drones, and they had utilized those drones to target a weapon system which was much more, thousands and thousands of times more expensive, such as the Tu-22 bombers, Tu-94 bombers, and other strategic bombers were targeted by small drones. 20 plus such bombers were neutralized in a space of just a few hours, and that too 4,000 kilometers inside the enemy territory. That's what shook the whole world, and especially Russia, when the next day there was going to be a peace talk and they walked away from it. And you have seen the way warfare has escalated since. They have also used the drones to attack a large number of refineries in Russia. I'm talking of Ukraine currently. And they have struck 16 refineries out of 38 refineries and reduced the production of oil, which Zelensky says is about 20-21%. They have reduced the oil, whereas others are talking of as much as 30 to 38% of production of oil has been reduced in Russia. On its part, both of them are developing hundreds and thousands of drones in a year and maybe coming close to the figure of 500,000 when they are looking at attacking those critical target systems which they can do with stealth and even if they lose a large number of drones, but even if one drone strikes one target system, it causes deep havoc over there. The other thing that Ukraine utilized, which was very nice, was their underwater drones. If you remember Torka, TLK 1000, which has a range of about 2000 kilometers, and it has a payload of 5,000 kgs, that is 5 tons. It was used to strike the Kerch Bridge in Crimea, two pairs of it. And if you remember how much damage it caused, similarly, they made life hell for the Black Sea fleet of Russia by using these underwater drones. And there are multiple varieties. It is TLK 200, TLK 400, and TLK 1000. And now they are planning to export to the US. But when we look at in our scenario, since China started with changing its doctrine from informationalized warfare to intelligentized warfare, they have brought a massive change in the way they look at warfare and in the way they look at approach to fighting wars in future. And that is where the unmanned ground vehicles could play a major role, especially in our area. And now, like the general is going to speak on that, I will not touch upon them, and I will only speak in case there are certain inputs later that I would like to give. But I would like to tell you one thing about these unmanned ground vehicles. There are two types. One is humanoid robotics, and the other is autonomous robotics or robos. So when it is humanoid robos, they resemble human beings and they even mimic the behavior of human beings. One example I can give you is Robo Wolf, which China has made, and it has absolutely a head, a torso, it has arms, and it has legs, and they go in fours or sixes or even twos, and they go as a team. They're carrying out surveillance and reconnaissance. They are using the machine guns in case they have to counter a target system. They are looking at snipers. They can even identify these snipers and tackle them. They are looking at where the mines are there. After carrying out surveillance and reconnaissance, they can operate as 2-man, 4-man, 6-man teams in neutralizing certain target systems. They could be used for perimeter defense. They can be used for patrols. They can be used as one of the army scouts which are moving ahead of the battalions or regiments, and they look and find out the target systems and they relay it back. So mostly the difference between a humanoid robo and an unmanned ground vehicle or autonomous is that there is human machine interface in the humanoid robo, which takes inputs from the human beings so that it can carry out those complex tasks. Whereas in the case of autonomous robots, they are completely devoid of human intervention, such as Sharp Claw, which Mule 200 UGVs, Lynx terrain vehicle, or Ice Hunter, which are being used perhaps even in Tibet, which the general will be covering in much detail. So there is a revolution that is taking place in robotics, and that revolution is being brought about because the way warfare is conducted today is making a huge change, and we are moving from manned to unmanned, especially when we find that we may not have so many pilots available in the air, or we may not have so many men available to take such missions where the attrition rate could be very high, like trawling for mines. Similarly, if you look at the area in our Indian Ocean region, if you remember 2020-21 period and up to 22, there were 8 to 10 underwater drones of China that were roaming around carrying out hydrographic surveys, and they could be utilized later on after they have carried out hydrographic surveys to lay mines in case of hostile situations, or to look at mines that are already existing under the sea, which the friendly country may have put, and the hostile country may have put. So they are now going to be utilized in a big way in Indian Ocean also. China's change of philosophy, doctrine, especially when they want to become the global power of artificial intelligence by 2030, they already come out with DeepSeek R1, they have come out with DeepSeek V2. And remember that day when Trump took over and the market fell by $1 trillion, that was primarily because of, and the artificial intelligence itself plays a huge role in these robos. And why does it play a huge role? Because it has a large number of neural networks that are able to learn, relearn, as well as do critical reasoning and solve complex problems. I would like to stop at this time, and if there are anything further, we'll continue.
It is really interesting to see the whole, conversation around how recently in news it was said that Ukraine is planning to deploy over 15,000 UGVs because they are facing shortage in soldiers that could do medical supplies or evacuate wounded soldiers. And I mean, there are some videos also of UGV actually going and getting Russian forces to surrender. And it is quite interesting to see how both the nations have quite literally boosted their supplying and usage in the battlefield. Thank you for your input on that. I would like to move on to Major General Sudhakar Jee. So, given the tensions between India and Pakistan and the increasing use of drones in sort of the last confrontation that we have, and also in conflicts that are going around the world in recent times, what kind of UAVs or UGVs does India really operate in? What are the equipments that we use, and where can we use? Where can we improve in those capabilities that we have? Also, keeping in mind that we should work at those counter drone systems that could help us boost our security.
Good evening, Anusua, Dr. Roshan, and very distinguished Air Commodore Ashminder. Firstly, I want to compliment Claus for having selected or chosen this topic, global challenges in building unmanned ground vehicle drones in warfighting and for commercial use. And because this is a subject, just coming straight, I'm glad that Anusua, you have gravitated the discussion and conversation to our subcontinent, how relevant it is. They may be, for Ukraine, it may be relevant and important, employing or deploying 15,000 drones because there is a lack of manpower there. And soon you will find Russia and China also following suit. I myself, I was commanding a division way back in 2016 and 17 when I reported the matter to my senior hierarchy that I have seen in my own eyes that on a platform from Chinese side, I found a machine gun pointing towards India, and I didn't find any troops. So how does the machine gun operating on its own autonomous method, how does it know whether the soldier it is aiming at is an Indian soldier or a Chinese soldier? I raised this point in one of the international conferences here held in Jaipur this year only, where our senior officials, General Satish Dua was there, General Lamba also was there, many defense officers, and a host of people who had come from all over, and they were discussing about AI, robotics, same the topic which you have given, and we seem to, jump the gun. Let me just put people under perspective that we are nowhere there. We may be beating our chest. It's very good to be very humble and start from a scratch. We have a long way to go. We cannot compare ourselves with China or America or South Korea or Israel. No, we have just about made a beginning, 6 months or 9 months down the line, and we have a long way, long journey. Let's put things in the perspective. Okay. Now, soon after that event, there was a podcast which was organized by Osana's Foundation, wherein a very seasoned journalist, I'm forgetting her name, she was Aditi Tyagi. She was asked to grill me on the issue of China leapfrogging in artificial intelligence. And instead of asking me about artificial intelligence, she just got after me that there are so many, she's from a defense background, that there are so many mortal remains or dead bodies coming from J&K every second, third day. Some people being ambushed, some people have been caught unaware totally in the bunker or living accommodation. Can't the task of the Jawans along the line of control be performed by robotics? This is a very interesting question which she asked. So I appreciated the concern of the lady or the journalist and went on to say a couple of issues. And those issues are, hopefully, they will answer your queries. First and foremost thing is that we need to put things in the perspective. There is one unmanned ground vehicle drone which is been extensively tested and tried out in Mali and Ukraine, and that is known as THEMIS, THEMIS, Tracked Hybrid Modular Infantry System. This is one of the types of UGV. It has been developed by a robotics company, Milbrem, in Estonia. It's a modular, multi-role platform to support infantry troops by performing missions like cargo transport, intelligence gathering, ordnance disposal, and reducing risk to soldiers. And it has been successfully tested in Ukraine. Now, why am I bringing out this issue? I'm bringing out this issue so as to draw some lessons which can be correlated to the subcontinent. The correlation is going to be in terms of two heads. First one is the technological enablers for UGV autonomy, because it's an autonomous platform. And in this, I wish to highlight the following issues. That there is an advanced perception system which fuses data from LIDAR, LIDAR. LIDAR is light detection and ranging technology. Based on 3D system, it gives you very three-dimensional pictures. And also it wish to touch upon the artificial intelligence in relation to deep learning for perception and reinforcing or reinforced learning for navigation. Navigation is the point to be underscored. Third one is the modularity. Fourth one is interoperability, like JAWS. JAWS is, as you all know, it is a joint system which the Western alliances are developing. You have multiple platforms. You have aerial platform, you have ground platform, you have naval platform, and all the platforms are put together. And the ground-based platforms, they coordinate all this and they carry out the operations. But more than the technological enablers, what is important is in your subject heading is the challenges which need to be addressed in relation to the Indian subcontinent. Indian subcontinent, I have spoken about the line of control, where the need of the hour is that will the robotics or the robots be able to be inducted or deployed inside the jungle? I had told this lady, she kept on asking me certain questions. Why can't, instead of Jawans going after the terrorists south of Pir Panjal ranges and north of Pir Panjal ranges, losing so many lives, why don't you put the robotics? Robotics, they have got some limitations. The limitations are going to be, firstly, off-road autonomy. Second is the localization of GPS denied environment. And third is the cyber security. Now, more than that, because this podcast will be, or video will be watched by many, there will be many like me. I'm an infantry soldier. I am not technically qualified. They will be looking around for some very simple articulations. So what happens when you get into a jungle at middle of the night? There is total darkness. Now, in the darkness, will the robots or the sensors fitted to the robots, will they be able to pick up the target? No. So they have to navigate through a complex kind of a terrain. The terrain could be undulating ground, it could be mountainous, it could be filled with shrubs and vegetation, undergrowth. Will they be able to navigate this particular path? Answer is no. Third is, when they get into the jungle, they are also vulnerable to be cut off from communication linkages. So how are they going to communicate? Without communication, which is the lifeline for survival of not only the machine, the human being cannot survive without communication. Third, fourth is how do they operate the machine system? The machine, the guns they are carrying, will they be operating by some manually operated pilot way behind with the press of a button, or they are going to be so intelligent that the decision making has to be made by the machine? It is the same decision making which the world order could not decide in Paris meeting recently held on the artificial intelligence. At what stage? We are still in the narrow part of the artificial intelligence. We have not gone on to narrow is something which is the human mind, decides below the human mind. Okay, we are yet to transcend or go beyond that particular level to a higher level. That may be another 5, 10 years or 15 years. Maybe the world order has to take a call. It is about the decision making by the machine, whether he has to press the trigger or not. Pressing of trigger, demands the following things. He has to identify, yes, here is a terrorist hiding. He's confirmed Jaish-e-Mohammed or he's confirmed Lashkar-e-Taiba. I need to hit him. So how does he confirm? Does your satellite system or surveillance system have got so well networked and information is so well fused that it provides real-time information to the robotics which is being pressed into the jungle to track? Firstly, there are 6 things to be done. You see, first is you got to track the target. Second is you have to target him, narrow down, fix your target. So it is to tracking, fixing the target, and thereafter you target the target, thereafter you engage the target, thereafter you carry out the damage assessment. There are 6 distinct steps that the machine has to undertake. Under these circumstances, is the robotics fair enough to be deployed for an operational or for a combat role? As of now, I'm afraid, though hypothetically speaking, we are nowhere there. We are basically getting the modular components, assembling them. We are yet to develop them. We have a dream. We have an ambition to create that ecosystem within the country. How much time will it take? I don't know. Although we are rated, I'm back from Bay Area. People have been talking very highly about India. I'm given to understand India is rated as 1, but I don't believe that India could be rated as number 1 in the world in terms of robotics. It's about robotics, it's about fusion, it is about integration. Second issue that I wish to highlight is that when you talk about the off-road mobility, the terrain that India has got, it's a very complex, unstructured terrain. It has got mud, it has got sand. Recently, we came to hear about Sir Creek. Now, Sir Creek is an area, unless you've been there, people will not be able to understand. This is not undulating, it's a plain surface. But there are places where there is water. Water is brackish water. Will the machine be able to withstand the challenges of brackish water? Will they be functionally efficient? Will they be able to pick up? There is infiltration by the terrorists taking place in Sir Creek area. Pakistan, in any case, is trying to send huge cargoes of narcotics through this area. The drones are moving, aerial drones are coming in. But soon, the manual means will be actually transiting through this corridor. So will our robotics or the machine or the UGV be able to perform the duties which are BSF boys who are manning 24/7, or if army is deployed for operational exigencies, can they replace the soldiers? To some extent, but we haven't achieved those kind of targets. Now you come to the line of actual control. When you talk about the line of actual control, I'll give you a very brief overview about Siachen Glacier. I've been there myself. Is it possible? It is highly possible. But the deficiency that we have is, you have terrain like unstructured terrains, mud, sand, snow, urban rubble. They remain a major technical obstacle for the UGVs. And this requires sophisticated software for real-time path planning and obstacle avoidance in dynamic and unpredictable environment. The second issue is when I speak about the localization of GPS denied areas, what does it mean? All the UGVs, till date it is all, unless our NAVIC system bounces back, NAVIC system has gone default and there is developed some defect, unless we developed a very credible, reliable and robust kind of a navigation system, which we claim we have. But we need to have a very well insulated kind of application system. And till then, the GPS signals are vulnerable. They are there in all the UGVs which have been developed by the Western countries. Please correct me if I am wrong. The signals are vulnerable to jamming. And when they are unavailable, then what happens is the navigation drift from inertial navigation system INS. There is an inbuilt system in every, and supposed to have the underground vehicles, unmanned ground vehicles, and these they create a lot of problems requiring or demanding alternative and robust methods for positioning and mapping. That is firstly the perception. Second is crystallizing the path they have to follow. This is in relation to the target. They should be very clear that the target is there. Who's going to pick up the target? Will the robo be capable enough to pick up the target in a jungle or in a creek area or in a high altitude or in Siachen Glacier? No, it has to be supported by some satellite system. Here is the target. Somebody has to give him that is the target, and the information has to be fused by a kind of a nodal agency, a central agency, maybe a big tower, which is fusing all these data with the help of different sensors. Sensors could be radars, they could be cameras, they could be lidars. Lidars is what I said, light detection ranging three-dimensional pictures. Also, the pictures can be information, can be sensor technology, they can be ultrasound, they can be inertial measurement units, they can be GPS, RTK, radio-based ranging, RFID, UWB, etc., etc. Now, you come to the integration of all these things. When you talk about the integration, it is about integration and interpreting the data from various sensors in real-time basis. So have we achieved this kind of capability? It has to have a cohesive situational map of the environment, so computationally intensive and critical for autonomous function, particularly in complex and low visibility conditions. Now, having covered all this, there are other limitations because I'm privy to certain kind of trials which are underway. The energy endurance. You see, any such kind of system like the Air Commodore has brought out, it requires uninterrupted power supply. Now, do they have those kind of mechanisms and the platforms for uninterrupted power supply? I don't think so. The solution perhaps would lie in what we are researching on hydrogen fuel. We have been successful. Perhaps that may be an alternate power source which has got a potential solution to the challenge that comes to my mind. The payload limitation, like the anchor brought out, Anusua, you brought out a very important point. They have been seen or they have been tried out for transportation of cargo, logistics in the battlefield. They have been carrying out casualty evacuation. They also have been carrying out military ordinances, ammunition, missiles, So these are the kinds of things. But the limitation is that power supply issues are compounded by the weight of payload. Supposed to be understood. Balancing payload capacity with battery power, stability, and the vehicle endurance is a key engineering challenge which is yet to have a solution in the world today. Command and control. Little while back, I was talking about decision making, which is the criticality in the world order. At what stage does the decision making do you hand over to the machine? Is that feasible and possible? I don't think so. The mankind should never give the decision making to such kind of machines. It should be retained by the mankind. That's my personal view. But command and control, what I mean is maintaining reliable communication beyond the visual line of sight is very difficult due to signal degradation in complex urban, rural terrains as also jungle terrain. Jamming and cyber threats are also major concerns, particularly for military UGVs. Now, coming to the interoperability, when you talk about the aerial vehicles, unmanned aerial vehicles, and the unmanned ground vehicles, integrating UGVs with the UAVs to work together effectively is hindered by incompatible communication protocols, data standards. Today, let me give a small example. Our colleague is from Air Force, he will bear me out. We have been struggling for past nearly 2 decades now. Air Force, Indian Army, and Navy, they do not have a one unified communication channel. I, for one, I have been pushing it hard that we need to operate one communication channel. We don't have. Despite the success of the Operation Sindoor, I must confess, bring out the fact that the need of the hour is that all the three services or multiple agencies operating you have cyber command coming up, your special forces, and likewise, all of them must have one channel communication. Until that is achieved, this is going to be a pipe dream. It cannot. It has to be coordinated by multiple agencies and fused together at one particular point. Then comes the
Right, sir.
I'll finish off. I have two more
Right,
points.
right.
The challenges. He said this is a subject which can be discussed later. The lethal autonomous weapon systems, moral accountability, humanitarian law, dehumanization of warfare, privacy and security, then the cost and market options, market adoption, then the regulation and standardization, environmental factors. These are issues which can be discussed later if time permits. Otherwise, from my side, these are the highlights I wanted to share with you. Not to sound negative or skeptical, but to be aware of the practical challenges on the ground so that all of us, 1.45 billion people, we are responsible and duty bound to put our head together to find a solution so that we don't start walking speedily, we start galloping and start catching up with countries like China, USA, Israel, and South Korea and Japan.
Right, sir. Sir, I believe you have covered very significant points in challenges and limitations to where we can develop. I would also like to request the Air Commodore for his comments on the India-Pakistan situation.
More than that, I would like to say that there are certain issues because China, Pakistan actually is way behind in terms of unmanned ground vehicles. I mean, even in robotics, basically, even their satellites, most of them are launched by China. And most of the technology that they get for their weapon systems, including the missiles, the satellites, as well as artificial intelligence, comes from Chinese or North Koreans. So I would say this that Pakistan is not really the threat that we are looking at when we talk of robotics or artificial intelligence. Let me just cover some of the systems which China is using currently in Ladakh as well as in the mountainous terrain. One such system is called Sharp Claw. They have 88 such robos, which are basically unmanned ground vehicles, which are operating in Ladakh. And they have 38 deployed right at the border itself. And these are nothing but machine gun carrying robos, which are designed for reconnaissance, patrolling, and transportation of weapons and supplies. And like the general very nicely, he has brought out the limitations, and I tend to agree with majority of them in terms of our context. But the Chinese, like Norinco company, has done a lot of research, and they have come out with certain automation. I'm sure that most of these things are still in the development stage, and that in autonomous control, for example, in perimeter defense or in patrolling very close to the border at a pre-designated lines, if they find hostile elements coming from the other side. Now, this is where, again, we don't have any form of regulations as to how to use the artificially intelligent robots when they are going across. We don't have any such regulations to say, okay, it could easily be one of our soldiers lost who has gone across the border and is trying to return back, who will be shot dead by these robots. But then again, those are the issues which the general very nicely brought about, and I don't want to get onto that. But I would like to tell you what the Chinese have done here. So they have a wheeled 6x6 UGV, which has got a weight of 1000 kgs. Now, again, the general, I listened to him very carefully because he's extremely knowledgeable. And he said one thing very nice, the payload. Now, they have not given a payload limit for this, but I assume that like Mule 200 UGV, which is being used by the Chinese also in Ladakh, and they are using Ice Hunter, which is a tracked vehicle. Now, unlike that tracked vehicle, this is a 6x6, which has a speed of 30 kilometers, range of 50 kilometers. And one thing he mentioned very nicely, which he said, how much is the endurance? Because the power system determines the endurance. And I must thank General Sudhakar for his deep sense of knowledge about these issues, which most of us try to brush it underneath the carpet. So this is just 2 hours. The operations endurance is just 2 hours, which means that's the battery life that it has got. Then again, it needs to be charged. So they would have to have either, like he mentioned, hydrogen cells or some other technology, or need the charging elements. Now, but currently they're using them for surveillance and combat capabilities also, because they got a machine gun fitted on top of this vehicle. It's a 6x6 vehicle, but Mule 200, which is also a robotized mule, it is designed for transportation and logistics. Essentially, it's got a payload of 200 kgs. So he was mentioning the payload part, and the first one goes up to a gradient of 60 degrees, whereas this one goes up to a gradient of 35 degrees. This has a range of 50 kilometers, and I think its endurance perhaps would be between 3 to 4 hours, or maybe 5 hours. But that is all the limit of endurance. They have about 120 to 200 Mule 200 unmanned ground vehicles that they have deployed. Now, the other one they have deployed is a tracked one, Ice Hunter. They have deployed this in near Arunachal Pradesh. Actually, if you look at it, these kind of unmanned ground vehicles, they are being deploying at reasonable areas where the obstacles are less. Remember, the general mentioned one very important point. When you go through the forest, when you go through obstacles, how is this going to surmount an obstacle? There are going to be limits of how they can surmount the obstacles and the gradients, and how you go across the gradient. It's not just climbing a gradient. You may have to go across the gradient, where it may become very difficult. Then they have VP-22 mine resistant ambush protected vehicles, and all terrain vehicles like Lynx, which also has significant amount of range as well as endurance. But again, the endurance eventually is limited. But when we are looking at using these systems, the first time that this system was used was by sword. A sword system was used by the Americans in I'm sorry, in Iraq War in 2003, when they used it for perimeter defense as well as for patrolling. Now, mostly they are just stationary elements in the posts, which are looking at if any hostile threat comes in, and then they target that threat. So these are more like pack bows, pack bots, like they would call it. See, sentry duty, yes, they can be used, and they would have a power point also close to it. And secondly, they could be used for surveillance and reconnaissance in a terrain that may be very difficult in terms of altitude, but it may not be that difficult in terms of gradient. So wherever the gradient is lesser, steeper, and less obstacles, perhaps they could be used currently. They reduce the risk to human soldiers in challenging and contested environment. There are strategic advantages also in this, when you do not lose your men who cannot maintain that high state of alertness for a long duration of time, which a robo can do. Or they don't have fear. Robos don't have fear. So that kind of advantages are there. Then they can trawl mines, IEDs. They can even pick up snipers, because they have been fed with a certain line beyond which, if any targeting is going on, or the fire is coming towards a particular area, then they are able to determine from where it is coming. Now, when we look at these unmanned ground vehicles, or we look at humanoid robots, they have essentially a machine, then an element on top, which could be a weapon system like a machine gun or a rocket launcher or something like that, which could be activated remotely. Then they could be wheeled or they could be tracked. And in case of humanoid robots, they could be having a kind of feet. Feet could itself have a very something close to like a cycle, small round objects underneath the feet. But again, like the general mentioned, that they would be very difficult in terms of a terrain where obstacles are numerous, undulating. I really don't think they can really survive that. So perhaps in Tibetan autonomous region, there are areas where they have deployed this. There are areas where they transport weapon systems and logistics supplies. And there are areas where they can utilize it for sentry duties and others. Similarly, in our country, I agree with him, totally agree with him, that there was an artificial intelligence national strategy which came out through the Niti Aayog. Then they had Ministry of Defense has an artificial intelligence task force. Then there is a artificial intelligence council. Then there is DIPA, that is Defense Artificial Intelligence Project Agency. But again, all of them are working piecemeal with the Center for Artificial Intelligence and Robotics and other DRDO organizations, which are being done in a piecemeal fashion. Now, the Army is actually gone ahead, and I really appreciate the Army for starting a Center for Innovation and Robotics in Bangalore, and they are working in close concert with a number of research organizations. So there are piecemeal efforts being made, and like the general was mentioning, but there is no integration between the three services, and also there is no, we are not looking at, we are looking at building incremental capabilities in the unmanned systems with the help of artificial intelligence, whether it is related to, I'm speaking from my heart now because the general spoke from his heart, but we are looking at the artificial intelligence coming in incrementally into the unmanned elements, whether it is drones, whether it is unmanned ground vehicles, whether it is humanoid robots. But we are not looking it as a comprehensive strategy that creates a cognitive domain where you can utilize it in military planning, command and control structures, training and simulation, surveillance and reconnaissance, where you fuse humongous amount of data which is coming from satellites, from aircraft drones, from ground radars, and then bring about a common operational picture. We are, I guess, about 15 to 20 years still behind when we are looking at this. And there is a lot of work needs to be done. But the most important thing is we cannot get negative, because this is the time the world is moving ahead. China is moving ahead. They are trying to become a global AI leader by 2030. They are trying to bring in artificial intelligence systems in every walk of life. In fact, they call it even their force structure. Modernization is now going to be hinged on artificial intelligence. Imagine when you have artificial intelligence incorporated in your command and control structures, you are even telling how the enemy is going to respond to the threat that you have presented, and you are
So,
working out your options with respect to how you can counter that threat. Last thing I want to say, I
so
just
I
want to
would,
take 30
yes.
more seconds. Once the artificial intelligence technology progresses to deep learning, then the neural networks are going to behave like human beings. We are still way behind this, and there definitely needs to be regulations and the way we utilize the artificial intelligence systems, primarily because you cannot leave the life and death call onto a robo which is being fed with the algorithms that we have fed, which could be corrupted even by cyber warfare, or it could be corrupted by wrong data inputted, because we are all human beings after all.
Right, sir. So thank you for that very detailed, what to say, the
Expose.
detailed insight on the scenario of unmanned systems. And I am really enjoying this podcast because we have taken what is the challenges to building UGV, and actually a lot of limitations and issues that we really need to address have come up. Um, Moving on, I would like to, since you talked about the major concern in South Asia being China, I would like to bring in Dr. Khanijo to shed some light on the whole trajectory of unmanned vehicles in China, and how they could sort of, change, if they can change dynamics or the security structure in the region.
Thank you, Anusua. And it's a very interesting podcast, and both the panelists have really gone into detail to tell what the challenges are. And I fully agree with them. But as far as the trajectory of China is concerned, firstly, as a Commodore Bahal also stated, that China aims for total domination in unmanned system by 2030. And we already know that they are supplying drones to Russia, and they are also major exporters to countries like Africa, Middle East, and Asia. Having said that, now if we try to see the unmanned vehicle trajectory, firstly we see that the PLS strategy has been to consider the unmanned vehicle as a significant pillar in their combat strategy. Now, if we see, it is a threefold strategy. Firstly, the operational roles of unmanned vehicles have expanded tremendously, right from surveillance, logistic to now it has come to combat role and precision strikes. Uh, and the other thing is it has diversified. We find that the multi-role is not only the combat drones, but also the underwater vehicles is playing a very important role as far as unmanned vehicles are concerned. There is an integration of autonomous system and swarms across all domains in China, whether it is land, air, or sea. And we find that, suppose if we take an example, the UCAVs, if we take Chinese UCAVs, we find that the sharp sword, GJ11, FH97, GJ13, robotics, Air Commodore Bahal has already spoken about. There are sharp claws, robo wolves, robo dogs, Mule 2000, which he has already spoken about. Then apart from that, we find that the drone swarm is also playing a very important role as far as China is concerned. So on one side, they have a high altitude and stealth drones, for example, sharp sword, which they are trying to operationalize in Tibet because of the environment challenges. And on the other hand, they also have medium altitude, long endurance drones like the Wing Long C8 series. And extra large UUVs they are developing as far as the naval wing is concerned, and which includes mine laying, and also it is being used, the underwater domain is being, the underwater drones are being used for strategic deterrence, sea denial, and for blockade scenarios. And especially we have seen this in their exercises which they are doing as far as simulating exercises against the Taiwan thing is concerned, the Taiwan scenario is concerned. India is concerned as far as the multi-domain force multiplier, what we call these UAVs are, because these drones have been kept at the Himalayan, the Tibetan sector, and which is providing China with a persistent surveillance and intelligence gathering missions of the troops and the logistics. And basically, it's giving them more situational awareness. And we find that China is not only developing the unmanned vehicles, but they are also developing anti-drone strategies. For example, we find that their direct energy and laser systems which they are developing to counter the unmanned system, that is the Hurricane series they have got, which are the high power microwave weapons. Then there are silent hunter lasers which they are developing. There are YLC 48 UAV Terminator radars, and they are also having AI based real time detection systems which are capable, which are stealth and are capable of locating stealth drones, as well as what you call it, other kind of things. So we find that China is going systematically not only in the unmanned vehicle system in all three domains, but also the anti-drone strategy also they are developing. Now coming to UGVs, it has already been stated there are a lot of challenges, and robotics is in the initial stage. It will take still time, and General Sudhakar Jee has rightly pointed out there are basically what I feel are there are 5 to 6 basic challenges. He has already spoken about the terrain challenge, the navigational challenges, the speed and maneuverability challenges, and the technical challenges. Along with that, there is also ethical challenge. The what he called about the laws, that is lethal autonomous weapon system. A lot has been done in this as far as the UN is concerned, and the human loop has to be there as far as this is concerned. You cannot have a system which is totally automated. So a lot is happening as far as China is concerned, and this will invariably have a cascading effect as far as South Asia is concerned.
Right. My last question would be something that has been in talks and discussions very recently, which we talk a lot about, is military civil fusion. So when we look at the going back to where it started, the Ukraine war, Ukraine has repurposed its civilian UGVs for war purposes. So they have a UGV which is called Baba Yaga, which was mainly used for agriculture purposes, but now it has been turned into a battlefield asset. So while we look at this transition of a civil drone to a military purpose drone now, do we also see, I mean, can India do something like that? Or do we have the capabilities and capacity to reach that fleet? I think I will start with Air Commodore Bahal and then move on to the speakers.
Yeah, thank you very much for asking comments from me. I tend to agree with you. When China started the robotics aspect in 1960s, they were having Peking University, National University of Defense, and there were large number of higher learning academic institutions that were integrated, and they were looking at different aspects. Some were looking at unmanned aerial elements, some were looking at unmanned ground vehicles, some were looking at artificial intelligence and to integrate into how does it get integrated into deep learning or super learning. And that is how they have been able to progress, because they have been doing it for 65 years. And we have also been doing, we have Center for Artificial Intelligence and Robotics, which is in existence for many decades, but there has not been a centralized focus towards getting the institutions of higher learning. Now, where it has taken place is Defense Artificial Intelligence Council. Now, at that place, yes, there is a link today, and there is a link with the higher institutions of learning. See, mostly the research is carried out in the higher institutions of learning, and its application is done in the industry. In our case, it is opposite. It's the DRDO organizations or the industries that are doing the research themselves, and they are now carrying out, translating it into the robotics or into the unmanned ground vehicles. So, what we need, perhaps, in my opinion, is that we need a centralized AI task force, which is there at MOD. We need to make it much more stronger. Second, and we need for it to actually be the task force that we have designed it for. And the second is that we need the three services to have representatives in that. Let us not work in isolation. Army has done a great job when they have created that Center for Innovation in Bangalore. But my request would be, why not the Air Force and Navy to also join in that, and let's do it together and let's do it much better. Third thing is, instead of building incremental capabilities, that what we are doing, we are integrating INS GPS, like the general was mentioning earlier, into our missiles, into our robots, into our weapon systems. But that is all being done in isolation. Now, when we are looking at intelligentization, then we are looking it as a complete cognitive domain, and that has to come centrally. It cannot come. Niti Aayog gave a national strategy. Okay, fine, for artificial intelligence that they did in 2018. But how is it being implemented? And who is being made responsible and accountable for that? Because everything starts with leadership. When we say that there are in the research organizations, there are slippages in timing, there are slippages in the outcomes not being achieved to the levels that you're looking at, and 75% of our projects are getting delayed, then we are not blaming anybody, but we are looking at leadership. We need to have a central leadership which runs this, and where all the three services get integrated in it. And then you will find that we will start functioning like how China is functioning. And what we need is, we are doing right now with the higher institutions of learning, is bulletproof jacket bana rahe hain unke sath. We are making bulletproof jackets. Are you aware of this? And also, certain very tactical level innovations are being carried out, and then we feel very nice about it. What we have to look at is we have to have a strategic AI vision very clear, and then we have to have the higher institutions of learning integrated with that, the IITs, and then we have to get implemented in major projects, though DIPA has been in existence now for close to 6 years.
Right. Dr. Roshan, any comments on the same?
I agree with what Air Commodore Bahal is saying, but I think it has to be a whole of nation approach. And the national level mandate has to be there because you need to eliminate all the barriers, especially bureaucratic and the cultural, whatever is there. You need to streamline a system because if the system is streamlined, then only we can make progress. Why China is making progress in such a fast manner? Because the system, the civil military fusion there is much more stronger. They have an advantage of being what you call it, kind of a government what they have. But here we also, government here is also trying to do a lot, and that is why this is the right environment which is present at present, and the industry has to take advantage of these things. Especially what area which I would like to mention is the research and development area. R&D has to be improved because whatever innovations takes place, it is through R&D. So more what you call it, the number of industries which are looking into R&D, I think is very minuscule. So firstly, from the government point of view, the R&D budget has to be increased, as also the industry has to increase its R&D project.
Right.
Uh,
Major General
I
Sudhakar.
would, yeah, I would just also like to ask Major General Sudhakar that what are the positives which are being taking place in the army? For example, it has been told that the drone units at the battalion level is going to come. There is going to be a Bhairav or a Rudra brigade is going to. So you can also a little bit enlighten us about what are the positives which are taking place after the Operation Sindoor as far as the drones are concerned.
Yeah, I'll cover that. Yeah, Anusua, you have any question from your side?
No, sir. You can look at the question that Dr. Roshan said.
Okay, in my articulation, I might have sounded very negative and pessimistic. It's not that. I am as much an Indian as each one of us is. All I'm saying is I am not prepared for my country to have another Pahalgam, nor am I prepared to have another Kargil, nor a Galwan, nor Doklam. Our country should be so proactive that we should be able to identify. While we all are discussing here, there is a media channel after my blood कि we want your special comments from Korea. ये क्या हुआ है? The Bangladesh is hot. What is hot? There is something that has happened in Tripura. I don't know. You see, these are the kinds of things. Can the unmanned ground vehicle have the capability to preempt or to predict if a superpower could not come to know that 9/11 was to happen, then what good is that country to be called as a superpower? Despite so much of chest beating, if Israel as a IDF, as the most formidable defense force in the world, they still couldn't actually anticipate that Hamas would be attacking on 7th October 2023 by blacking out the electromagnetic spectrum. So highly sophisticated and technical. In fact, today in the world order, none of the countries, including the leading economy, armed forces, they have this capability to black out the electromagnetic spectrum for 30 minutes or whatever time. And during that blackout stage, they launch an offensive, multi-domain operation. So, does our ground, because what I'm coming to in response to the question, good question is, does this ground, unmanned ground vehicle, does it have the status of a pivot? My answer is yes. Something which is resting on the ground has to become the pivot. It has to have multiple integrated kind of an ecosystem, which will integrate the aerial platform, integrate the naval platform, integrate with the space platform, integrate with any God-forsaken platform that hasn't come to our mind till now. But having said that, let's not be so pessimistic. A lot of miles distances have been covered. And while giving that podcast a couple of months back to that India Today journalist, I had done my initial study trying to find out. I am told that the mission, artificial intelligence mission of India, has already selected Kanpur as the nodal base, the IIT Kanpur. And there is something which a Commodore has explained, something like that is existing. I don't know for sure. I need to do a little little bit more preparation, but there is something existing. It came into existence about, I think, 1 year back or 9 months back. But we have a long way to go. Second, all that I would say, which Dr. Roshan has brought out, yes, Rudra Brigade is essentially what is Rudra Brigade. Rudra Brigade is taking into account all these aspects. It's based on a concept of the CAB or the Combat Armored Brigade. It will have 7 to 8 battalions. A division has got 9 battalions, a little smaller than a division, but it will have all the resources, logistic unit, supply unit, communication unit, everything integrated with the state of the art technology like this coming to us and giving us all kinds of the decision making by the human commander, the man on the hierarchy will be so facilitated that he will be given an information well in advance to make him proactive. That should be the objective and the aim of all our operations. We should not come to know about Pahalgam after it has happened. We came to know about Pahalgam or the Kargil after so many months or so many hours of the occurrence of the event. That should not be the concept of the philosophy of Indian Armed Forces. The philosophy should be that we should be in such well above the loop or ahead of the loop in such a manner so that we get to know before enemy plans to do something or launches something from its own land. This time they are shifting Muridke camp and Jaish-e-Mohammed headquarters from Bahawalpur close to Durand line. Now our eyes and ears should go up. Our surveillance system should go up. RAW is doing a good job, great job, compliments to them. But we need to actually keep our eyes and ears open as to what are the next plan. Are they moving towards India's side? When are they moving? What is the target? I'm given to understand the new threat has to be kept in mind. The new threat emerging is, like Air Commodore brought out about the spider web, if they could go 4,500 kilometers deep into Russia, plan it over 18 months, and strike the strategic bombers, the strategic aircrafts, 40 of them, not one or two, 40 of them. If they could do it, what is going to stop this Muridke, Jaish-e-Mohammed, the Lashkar-e-Taiba party to come into the hinterland? They need not come back or come into the hinterland. There are sleeper cells existing. These are new threats that we have to factor in. There is a regional caliphate. Al-Qaeda has, the module has been busted in Pune, 80 kilometers, 60 kilometers northwest of Pune. 150 or more people have been apprehended. There is, our PFI has been banned, all right. Our internal fault lines are being taken advantage of, and the radicalization is being used as a new oil to cause turbulence and disturbance within the subcontinent so that the economy doesn't grow as fast as it is growing, so that it takes a retardation in our progress. That is the ultimate aim. If these are the new kinds of threats, be it from Bangladesh or Siliguri corridor or from, say, Manipur or Myanmar or the Bay of Bengal or the Indian Ocean region, are we prepared or are we factoring in these issues and dovetailing them in our developmental projects like R&D, which Dr. Roshan said? Are we considering all these aspects so that a kind of a preemptive threat analysis is carried out by such kind of pivots and it is given to the commander who is to take a final decision? These are my closing lines, but the final issue, one line I would like to say: sensor technologies, they have to be fused, which includes camera, ultrasound, you have different kinds of radars, lidars, etc., etc. That is the biggest challenge today. We have different kinds of architectures which are existing, particularly to map the ground. The topography mapping is very, very important. It is brought under the heading of perception. How does the machine perceive the ground in front? If it is perception of the ground is correct, then the path will be correct. Then the path to the target will be correct. Then it will be able to respond these kind of things. I'm sure people who are domain experts will be factoring in all this. And most important, like Dr. Roshan has brought out, is that the R&D. I had been invited to give a podcast a couple of days back by Pentagon House. In that, when I said the R&D is 0.65% of the GDP, I was corrected by the youngster to say that R&D in defense has gone up to 6%. I don't believe. If you just do it for 1 year, it is not that 6%. And somebody corrected to tell me R&D in defense forces has gone up to 3.6%. That also I don't believe. We need to, R&D is not isolated. It is not to be operating in silos like A. Commodore brought out. The concept is such that it has to be a unified, integrated, and synergized operation between Army, Navy, Air Force, Strategic Force, and host of other elements. To be whole of nation to be applied here. Agriculture will come, medical also will come in this. It's a national approach. And second thing that I wish to say by summing up over here is that it is not only R&D. We also need to factor in the socio-economic factor. There is a youth bulge, which is the biggest threat in the country, and our employment opportunities are far and few. If we keep taking reference of China, then perhaps it gives us a misleading inference. And misleading inference is China today is challenged with one-child policy and the consequences. One. Number two, there are very far and few people who are willing. Number three, the Constitution of China says that a male child or a child born to the parents, he is duty bound to come back and look after his old parents. These are the challenges because of which the China's armed forces have been brought down from 4.9 million to 2 million, and they are planning to further bring it down to 1.5 million in time scale. Thank you.
Right. I think this is a very interesting and very in-depth discussion that we have had. And as we keep on delving into different aspects of it, I think this is a much larger topic, just the challenges itself. And as you know, as and when there are developments in technology, I think the loopholes and challenges within the technology may be operationalism in it, or the integration. I think those keep on increasing, and it is very important that academics and practitioners really keep on having a reoccurring conversation about it, and then people who are in the industry implement it. So I thank all the three speakers. Thank you for your time and your insights on the subject. With this, we come to the end of today's podcast.
Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr.